Good evening, and thank you for showing up to tonight's town hall. Community investment, not community police. My name is Dee Colin. Some of you know me as Dee Colin Charleston as well. I am a Troy resident, poet, visual artist, educator, and one of the newest members to the board of the Sanctuary for Independent Media. And I'll be moderating tonight's event. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the Mohican people. It is with gratitude and humility that we acknowledge that the Sanctuary for Independent Media resides upon the ancestral homelands of the Mohican people, who are indigenous peoples of the lands of New York. Despite tremendous hardships and being forced from their lands, today their community resides in Wisconsin and is known as the Stockbridge-Munsee community. We pay honor and respect to their ancestors, past and present, as we commit to building a more inclusive and equitable space for all. Few housekeeping items. We have a number of community members speaking tonight. You are welcome to use the chat to ask questions for the panelists. A reminder that this event is being recorded and streamed live on Facebook. And if you have your camera enabled, you could be visible on the recording. In order to ask questions, you can put your questions in the chat to the panelists and we'll get to those questions as best as we can. You can look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a chat box and a Q&A box. Also, to make sure we can hear everyone clearly, it's important to stay muted unless it is your time to speak. Okay, so on to the business of tonight. Just to provide some background, Governor Cuomo issued an executive order 203 in June of 2020 after the murder of George Floyd. This executive order was issued calling upon all New York State municipalities with police departments to carry out a comprehensive review of policies, procedures, and practices for the purposes of addressing the particular needs of the community served by such police agency and promote community engagement to foster trust, fairness, and legitimacy, and to address any racial bias and disproportionate policing of communities of color. While many cities began in June 2020, Troy waited until February 2021 to hold 9 under-publicized and highly controlled meetings. 3 meetings amongst themselves, 3 taking public comment, and 3 hearing from affinity groups. In March, Mayor Madden drafted a report with recommendations on policing. The report is thin on substance and barely scratches the surface on many of the recommendations, particularly made by Black and Brown members of the PRRC and community members addressing the group. The one recommendation that they included in the report that calls for expanding the police budget through the addition of 6 officers is now the first action that they are taking out of this process. After that report was released, I went to a speak out at the riverfront and I wrote a statement in response to the report. And so I'm going to just read through that. And this is what I said. When I read Executive Order 203 issued by the governor and then read the final report of the Troy Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative Plan released by our mayor, it is clear that there is not only a lack of understanding, but also a dismissal of community voices speaking out against racism. The governor's executive order says, whereas beginning on May 25th, 2020, following the police-involved death of George Floyd in Minnesota, protests have taken place daily throughout the nation in communities across New York State in response to police-involved deaths and racially biased law enforcement to demand change, action, and accountability. The PRRC report issued by the mayor fails to recognize that here in Troy, last June, 11,000 people showed up in solidarity to demand change, action, and accountability. The governor's executive order says, whereas there is a long and painful history in New York State of discrimination and mistreatment of Black and African-American citizens dating back to the arrival of the first enslaved Africans in America. The PRRC report issued by the mayor makes no such acknowledgement. The governor's executive order says the recent history includes a number of incidents involving the police that have resulted in the deaths of unarmed civilians, predominantly Black and African-American men, that have undermined the public's confidence and trust in our system of law enforcement and criminal justice, and such condition is ongoing and urgently needs to be rectified. The report issued by the mayor makes no such acknowledgement. And furthermore, during the process of meeting, the police chief would not recognize the existence of systemic racism in his own department. The governor's executive order says, these deaths in New York State include those of Anthony Baez, Amadou Diallo, Usman Zango, Sean Bell, Ramarley Graham, Patrick Dorsman, Akai Gurley, and Eric Garner, amongst others. And in other states include Oscar Grant, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Laquan McDonald, Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, Philando Castile, Antoine Rose Jr., Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, amongst others. The report issued by the mayor makes no such acknowledgement or mention of Edson Thevenin and others harmed or killed by Troy PD, or any acknowledgement of how systemic racism has manifested in their department. Very simply, the governor's executive order says, whereas Black Lives Matter, the mayor's report makes no such acknowledgement. The Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative Plan did not set uprooting systemic racism out of policing in shore, neither as a goal or intention, although the governor's executive order says quite plain as day that that is the goal and intention. Community members showed up, spoke out, and endured a process that was exhausting, triggering, lacking in accessibility, and which left those hoping for change feeling unheard yet again. The decision to add 6 more community police officers further aggravates that sense of dismissal of community voices and concerns. We cannot set out to present a palatable discussion on policing when we know in order to affect change, it is vital to listen to the people and engage in uncomfortable conversations that are transparent, yield understanding, and hold true to the intention and goal of Executive Order 203 and our urgency to dismantle racism and build communities that are safe for all of us. And with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker. It's Colin Donnaruma. He's a local attorney, activist, and vice president of the, I'm going to say it wrong, NYCLU.
That's right. Thank you, Dee. The New York Civil Liberties Union. I'm vice president of our Capital Region chapter and a former state board member. Although I'm speaking tonight in my personal capacity, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to do so, because frankly, I was baffled, if not astounded, by the proposal from the mayor to expand the Troy Police Department in the current political context we find ourselves in. So by way of background, the Troy Police Department has consistently been a source of complaints about constitutional violations, about infringements of civil liberties. This is a department that just a few years ago had to disband its entire drug unit because of severe corruption. It has recently been sued by one of its only officers of color for pervasive and systematic racism. This is a police department that assaulted and arrested a Black Lives Matter activist last summer simply for trying to access a complaint form. This is the police department that shot and gravely wounded Damique McDonald, and no one was held accountable. This is also a police department that shot and killed Edson Thevenin, and then was so blatant in its attempt to cover up that shooting and protect its officer that the district attorney for Rensselaer County ended up being indicted on felony charges by the state attorney general. So the Troy Police Department is a department that we have grave concerns about. It is not a department that should be expanding and that more resources should be directed into. Nationally, there's a growing consensus about the problem of over-policing in our communities. Increasingly, the debate that's occurring is about right-sizing, downsizing versus defunding versus abolition with regard to police departments, not expansion and adding more officers. And I realize that Troy is not Albany, but this is the capital region. And I think that we need to acknowledge that this discussion about policing is occurring barely a week since at Albany's South Station, scores of Albany police officers clad in paramilitary riot gear covered their badge numbers and names with duct tape, donned shields with thin blue lines on them, which is largely as a symbol of white supremacy and hate speech. They then proceeded to club peaceful protesters and arrest and assault them and claim that it was for the public safety. It's within that local, regional, and national context that the mayor has proposed expanding the Troy Police Department, a proposal which I think is profoundly misguided. I think it's tone deaf. I think it's completely out of sync with public sentiment and changes in public policy. The mayor has attempted to justify the proposal by labeling it as community policing and emphasizing that these will be officers who are on the streets interacting with the public. And I'm excited to hear a lot tonight about the fact that there are serious community needs that need to be addressed and discussed, from affordable housing to public and mental health, to childcare, to education, to access to healthy foods. These are important and critical community needs, none of which are furthered by having more armed police patrolling our neighborhoods. Police are not trained or intended to address these community needs. And if history is any guide, it suggests that more policing will mean more stops. It'll mean more searches. It'll mean more arrests. It'll mean more incarceration. It'll mean more harm to communities, disproportionately communities of color, poor, Black, brown communities. This proposal will not meet any of these community needs that I identified. And in fact, worse, it will actively divert funds away from them, putting yet more resources towards a police department that has been historically problematic. So I think it's time to reimagine what public safety looks like and to reject antiquated proposals like the one that Mayor Madden is putting forth. So I'm happy to be here tonight and looking forward to hearing from community members about what they think the real needs of folks in Troy are. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. And so we have a series of speakers who will be answering this question, what your concerns are in adding 6 additional police officers. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes. And first up, we have Starletta Smith from the YWCA. Starletta is the executive director of the YWCA. What are your concerns in adding 6 additional police officers?
Thank you, Danielle. Adding to what Colin had already mentioned, I do have a few concerns with adding 6 additional officers. First, the city of Troy continues to be deaf to what our community has already spoken about and continues to speak about. And one of those things was not having the need or want for any additional police. Second, we are bringing in additional officers when the city didn't even address or attempt to fix the current issue within the force, and not even addressing that, not being able to admit that systemic racism even exists within their organization. So for me, that just means that these officers are going to come in and pretty much be adopted by the same tactics or as what's used now. The lack of accountability to their oppressive behaviors. These 6 officers, like I said, are going to learn and continue to learn and grow within these behaviors. Last is that, you know, we had a slew of things that we could have used this money for. And the fact that we're going to use this money to employ 6 new officers, there's other resources that we need in the city of Troy versus more cops. And like Colin said, these things, you know, when we don't, when we're not listening to our community, other things start to fall apart, and that's trust, accountability, transparency, and City of Troy is not ready for any of that, you know. So it's disheartening, but overall, we as a community have to find other ways for them to hear us, because these 6 new officers are going to come in and fall into line with everybody else, with the rest of the force. So that's my take on adding 6 additional police. It's horrendous, but it was a slap in the face, to say the least.
Thank you, Starletta. I'm gonna pass it on now to Jerry Ford.
Good evening, everyone. Just want to thank everyone that took the time out this evening to participate in this so needed town hall to bring to light the blatant fact that Black voices are being ignored. Black voices are not being valued. Well, first let me say that I sit as a part of the Troy Coalition for Black Leaders. We participated in this PRRC committee as one of the affinity groups, and we presented what we found to be issues that could be addressed when it comes to policing in our communities and in the city of Troy. The fact that that there was a very lack of Black people that sat on that committee, first and foremost, was addressed from the beginning. Well, it was inquired about from the beginning, but it was never addressed. We didn't see enough people of color on the committee so that our voices could truly be heard. And so as we went through the process, we had community members and different groups come up, and they expressed their concerns, and they expressed their needs, and they expressed their wants. And what we wound up with is 6 officers being proposed to be added to the police force. So all out of, you know, everything that we've done over the past decade or so in our ask, and as we went to city council meetings, everything that we've been through, all of a sudden, the city now has about $250,000 to add to their budget, when members of our city have been asking for a community center predominantly in the North Central area, so that we can prevent our young people from engaging in criminal behavior, engaging in gangs, that we can help parents get GEDs, and we can help our seniors and the elderly of our community stay connected, because they're now, you know, isolated now due to their age. And these concerns were ignored, and wherever the money came from, the first concern to our city was to add 6 more police officers. We feel that once again, our voices are falling on deaf ears, and we want to make it known that it is totally unacceptable for elected officials to ignore the voice of the people that they represent. I'm gonna say that one more time. It is totally unacceptable for elected officials to totally ignore the voices of the people that they represent. This is not what we want. We don't need more policing. Policing is just like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. That's a part of the solution. Now, that's a part of the problem. We need solution-based responses to the things that we're seeing. And so that means more programs to divert our young people from criminal behavior, more programs that are gonna attack poverty and get people a living wage. We need more shopping malls so that we can answer the food desert that exists in our communities. While there's, you know, children that are eating out of the corner stores because there's no grocery stores that they can walk to. There are a lot of different things. About $250,000 could be added to for our city, and 6 police officers doesn't help us at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And right now we're going to hear from a member of our community youth and hear from Diamond.
Hi. So this, I've been trying to move into the more political side of everything, being that I'm 19 now, and I'm no longer in school or high school. So the restrictions that restricted me before are very different now. When Mr. Ford called me and let me know what was going on, I immediately jumped on it. I was like, yes, I'll say something. And the more I've been sitting here since that call and thinking about it, the more I feel myself fighting back tears, which is sad. And so I just wrote a couple of things, and I don't know if anyone from the police department is in this meeting, but I wrote it in the format as if they were. So please bear with me. Starting off, dear police chief, I ask you personally, where are those events you broke your back to push in front of those who you claimed have your hands tied when you were sitting across the table from me? You looked me in my face and told me funding is unavailable to have any events bringing your officers and the people of color in the community that you serve together. But as I have seen past the meeting that we had and before the meeting we had, there is funding for luxury apartment buildings that no one in Troy can afford. There's funding for luxury charging stations for Teslas that no one from Troy drives. There is funding for the building across the street from Troy Police Department and the gate that you built around it. But there is no funding for either pool that we've been trying to get open for years now. There's no funding for those buildings that have been standing for 15 plus years, because I've been here since 2013 on and off. And I've watched as more and more buildings become unavailable. Buildings that I grew up in are closed, no one living in them, but yet they still stand. So that tells me that there's nothing wrong with these buildings. They just aren't up to code. So how about instead of we spending money on 6 officers, because honestly, where were those 6 officers when the 12 incidents of shootings happened? They weren't here, so they can't do anything. They won't do anything but add to the problem. You cannot fix a problem unless you fix everything causing the issue. But instead of buying luxury apartments or building luxury apartments, because you don't even buy them, you build them from scratch. And then you post pictures on social media as if downtown really looks the way that the pictures said that they do, but they don't. It doesn't make sense to me how you took me in my face and you thought that walking across the street and up the hill to where I was going to be enough to silence my voice and get me on your side. Sir, it is not. I looked you in your face and I shook your hand, and I was amazed by the fact that you were coming and talking to me, little old me. And then I realized I'm not little anymore, and I'm not old. I'm tired. I'm tired of walking down the street and seeing all of these buildings with X's on them. Don't go in them. Don't do this. We don't want you sitting on the steps. But how about we use the funding to rebuild those buildings, those very buildings that no one is supposed to go in? If you rebuild them and you get those people that you don't like off the streets, the very people that your police officers, whom I witnessed and showed you videos of them picking on, bullying, very much diminishing and belittling homeless drug addicts. Instead of doing all of that, how about we put the funding into putting those buildings back together so that those can become shelters for them? Children are out here running around and, oh, I got a gun, I'm so cool, I'm so bad. No, children used to think like that. Now they think I have to protect myself. I have 14 friends that I can't hang out with because even a slight noise scares them to the point where they're reaching for their bag, they're reaching for their book bag, they're reaching for their safety because they can't walk outside the street because there is no guarantee that we're gonna make it home. I have a mother who cries to me every single night because I told her I want to get into politics. And she said she don't want me to end up in a ditch because of the color of my skin, because of how you all feel that I deserve to be treated. I graduated with a 98.20. The only man in the school who said, congratulations, I knew you can do it, was a Troy police officer. And I was very grateful for that. But he also looked me in my face and said, Diamond, I'm sorry that no one else on the police force came when you sent out emails for a community car wash. But I have my car, I have my wife's car, I have my squad car. Can we wash these? It's sad that it's only one person and it's not even the chief of police. When you knew about it and shook my hand, you knew about everything. I told you everything that was going on in the community. I told you how people are out here crying because of how people are being treated and nothing happened. And I truly hope that these 6 police officers, if it does go through, does not hinder or stop the movement. And for everyone, I seen a comment today on a post that I made and I deleted it, but it was a comment that said, for all of the police officers out there, we're sorry that you can't hear us over the noise, but just know that we love and support you. I'm going to make as much noise as I can. If my noise disturbs you to the point where you feel like you have to apologize to them and everyone has to feel unloved, if you feel unloved every day, then I feel like I'm doing my job because I feel unloved every second of every minute of every hour. Because I don't have the security to go outside of my house to check my mailbox. And my mailbox is on my house. All I got to do is stretch my arm. I can't even do that. I do not feel like the police department deserves to have 6 more officers because how dare you say, I want to have 6 officers to make my life easier when you aren't doing anything but making even more people's lives harder. I don't feel like their load should be lighter. I don't feel like they should be able to take a breath, a breather, wipe the sweat off their forehead. I don't feel like that's able to be happening. I don't feel like that should be something that you feel you deserve. But I'm just a youth. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Diamond. I'm sorry, I'm fighting back tears. This is why it's so important to give voices to our young people, because you can't dismiss people because they're young. They see what's out here. They know what they need. And when they speak, we have to hear them. We have to hear them. I'm so moved by that. And I don't think for anybody who's watching on Facebook, if you watch this entire thing and you haven't been moved, then you really have to ask yourself some serious questions, because I am moved by all the words that have been spoken tonight. And we have some more speakers. So right now I would like to pass it on to Renee Powell. Renee is ready from the NAACP Troy branch.
Okay, here I am. All right. Good evening, everyone. And I have a hard act to follow. Diamond, that was very powerful, and thank you for that. Again, I'm Renee Powell, president of the NAACP Troy branch, and I'm pleased to be a co-sponsor of this coalition of Troy organizations and citizens to discuss this policing of our community. Now, in the United States, there's approximately 18,000 federal, state, and local city police departments, and they all have their own rules. And that's why what we're doing tonight is very important. There's no standard set rules anywhere. Everybody has their own rules. We have to pay attention to what's governing for our area. Now, the city of Troy City Council will be voting to fund the hiring of 6 additional officers to the Troy Police Department. And that's why we're here to discuss this. Now, in any other type of situation or environment, you would think, oh, this is good news. Our city is flourishing. We have some employment opportunity. Should be a good thing, but it's not. And the reason it's not is because we have not addressed the concerns of the policies of the department. They have not changed, and that leads to the lack of trust and transparency for the people of the community. Now, the NAACP's position on law enforcement reform is, number one, calling on the United Nations. And I know people saying United Nations. Well, like Starletta said, we're going to have to look for different ways to address this area, this concern. And so the NAACP's position is, number one, calling on the United Nations to step up and classify the mistreatment of Black and brown people in the United States, and Troy's in the United States, by the police as a human rights violation, aggressively calling out the US government in the process and impose sanctions if necessary. The other position is a sweeping police reform, and that's what we were supposed to be discussing with the PRRC, and here we are today. And this police reform is to include federal legislation that mandating a zero tolerance approach in penalizing and or prosecuting police officers who kill unarmed, non-violent, non-resisting individuals in an arrest. Now, in this sweeping police reform and federal legislation, it includes 5 principles. Number one, banning the use of the knee holds and choke holds. Number two, the use of force continuum for any police department in the country must ensure that there are 6 levels of steps with clear rules on escalation. So that means there's going to be some time for these situations to get out of control. It's not going to 0 to 100 in 1 second. The third principle is that each state's Open Records Act must ensure officers' misconduct information and disciplinary history are not shielded from the public. The fourth principle is the recertification of credentials may be denied for a police officer if it's determined that their use of deadly force was unwarranted by federal guidelines. And the fifth principle is implementation of the Citizens Review Board in municipalities to hold police departments accountable and to build public confidence. We have been through at least 3 of these steps here, talking about having access to the records, police records. We are supposed to be in the process of having the review board up and going, and this has been going on for, I know, at least 2 years. I've been in discussions with the mayor about this, but these are things that need to take place before we bring on 6 additional officers, because we have some things that need to be straightened out before we bring in new people. It's almost like, for me, I'll just put it where the ghost can get it. You wouldn't mix in your clean clothes with your dirty clothes, okay? You want to come in with a fresh start. And if you're going to bring in something new, then you kind of clean up your space and bring in your new people. We're not there yet. As Starletta said, we're not there yet. In closing, I just want to say that we need to continue raising our voices, lifting our voices. As Diamond says, if it makes you uncomfortable, then the job is done. But this needs to be done because over the past year, we've seen nationwide and local protests where people are angry, in pain, fearful, and a lot of it is due to the distrust and lack of transparency within the policing community. So I just want to encourage us to continue the local fight and also pay attention to the national fight. It all comes together, and in the end, we just have to prevail in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. And now we're going to hear from Tasheca Madina from Equality for Troy.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dee. I love you. I just want to say, Diamond, wow. You remind me of me when I was in high school. And they're going to say you're going to end up in a ditch. Don't believe them. They ain't got enough tenacity like we do. Keep your Black voice going and don't ever let nobody stop your voice. Ever. You hear me? Who that little sister moved me. So I wanted to start on the disrespect. Troy and, you know, the local municipality as a whole and the local government has always been disrespectful to the BIPOC community. As Ms. Powell said, we can't mix the dirty with the clean. They gotta clean up their mess. And certainly hiring 6 officers before they even try to do any type of rethinking, reimagining, whatever they trying to do in, they need to get some of them officers out of there, like Kyle Jones, Commentel, yeah, because I can name them out because they have done extreme harm. So we have to do that first. And I want to uphold what Star said. We have so many crooked cops, you know, in the city of Troy. We don't need them. You know, at this point in time, we have so much that needs to be done with those figures. Those figures can be allocated, like Jerry said, into the youth, like Diamond. Let's make some programs where we uplift our baby voices. Because just like Diamond, we got about 10 to 12 Black brothers downtown and across Troy, New York, with the same perspective. We need something for these babies to do. Last summer was a tumultuous time. I think that the whole community of Troy was interrupted when we got to sit and bury 11, 12, 15, 17-year-olds. It was a tumultuous time for our city. And we don't want to go through it no more. Because let's talk about how many of these community officers that they want to hire will actually live in our community, will actually know what goes on in our community. None. They're going to come here, they're going to terrorize, and they're going to go back to their towns and live peaceful while we living in mayhem. I want to bring up what Mr. Donnaruma said. This is really fresh. People do not understand. Just only 2 years ago, they was dismantling their whole drug unit. From officers being accused of actually doing the drugs to actually dealing the drugs and shaking down drug dealers. I watched them. I lived on 9th Street. Listen, I'm from the hood. I watched them do some real crooked stuff. And still, no mayhem. I'm coming. And then my last thing on there is that we need to uplift our children's voices and definitely get some programs. They already voted. So I just want to let the community know when Troy do, they never include the Black community. They already voted them 6 community officers is coming. So we need to figure out a way. How do we diverse and come together and unify and amplify our Black communities as a whole? And then the last thing I was going to say is, Ms. Powell, yes, you are right. We can go to the United Nations, just like, because if anybody don't know, my background is law. So yes, we can go to the United Nations and we can do that. And please get with me on that, because that's where my mindset is. Because if the Jews can do it, if Chinese can get a bill before Black, they can get an Asian hate bill. And I'm sorry, I love my Asian folks, but we've been fighting for our rights for 400 and some odd years. And if they can get a bill before us, that speaks on the values of what our Black lives mean to America. And I'm done on that.
Thank you, Tasheca. There's so much truth being spoken tonight. I hope everyone's taking notes. I've already jotted down some things that are quotable. So thank you for your words. Next, we are going to hear from Deanna Swenson.
Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me? My phone kind of cuts out. Okay. So I am just a North Central resident, and everybody said a lot. Diamond, I love you. I love you so much. But I agree, like 6 more officers is not it. Like, I live in North Central. I watch every day them profile groups. Like, I've drove behind them and watched them, break their neck to look at the group of Black boys versus the group of white boys that are doing the same exact thing. Sorry, you guys, I'm trying to do too much at once. I don't even know where to go, because everybody like already said everything that I had to say, from, criminalizing our babies. Like, these are little kids outside because they have nowhere to go and nothing to do. And like, my phone just died.
Oh no, it looks like we lost Deanna. Okay. I'm gonna try to come back to Deanna if there's a chance to do that. And right now, let's pass it on to Jessica Ashley from the Justice Center.
Yes, good evening to everyone. I've been listening, and our pain is all the same. The city of Troy, with our police department, one of the major things we need to realize, and this is what I know that the mayor is doing, there is money in the accreditation that the city has, gains them money, state and federal. And somehow we need to make sure that our voices are heard regarding what the city of Troy does to make it appear as if it needs more police. The more people they arrest, the data that they present is data that makes it appear as if the city of Troy is on fire. You can be arrested. They at one point were arresting people for spitting, jaywalking, riding the bikes without a light, without a bell. There was an ordinance made so that they could have more arrests in doing that. All these petty crimes. Now, I know that we're hearing about these horrific, horrible shootings, but the fact of the matter is, Troy is not a city on fire, and it never has been. Crime was going, these ugly things that were going on today were going on when I was a child. And I remember how we would hear how some Saturday night party, how they had cut up so-and-so and shot so-and-so. That stuff was happening. I'm not playing it down. I'm just saying that it's been going on for a mighty long time. So with that said, there is a need for police. There is not any need for additional police. Now, you're one of the police department or the mayor wants to spend $250,000. Look at Prospect Park has been without a pool. I was a child and learned how to swim in the Prospect pool. That park has been so neglected, and no monies have been presented for that park, which is a park that I grew up playing in, myself and siblings and friends. The pool has trees growing out of it because it was so neglected. So what has happened with all of the activities that were available for our children in this city, they were neglected. Our children don't have a city. I have actually said to my children as they were growing up, you need to leave Troy. Troy has nothing to offer. Why? Because of the way Troy has been neglected. They have taken monies that should have been allocated for the parks, for the pools, for social activities for the children, and they have taken that money and tossed it away to God only knows what. And now they want to justify what they're doing because we have crimes or problems that are happening in the city as a direct result of the city being neglected. Our children, listen, the center that you were talking about, that someone was speaking of earlier, we even have to think out of the box. We can't, no longer is a 5:30, 6 o'clock club acceptable. Our children need something that is open till 11, 12 o'clock at night. Why? Because their parents are forced to work double shifts because they have low-paying jobs and they're working as aides at these nursing homes and they're not making enough money to pay the rent in these slumlord apartments. And so as a result, they've got to work 12 and 16 hours, which means your 12-year-old child does not have anybody monitoring him. We need to, as a community, take care of one another. We need the monies that we are paying our tax dollars for to be directed back into our city. When you give the money to the police, you're not giving it to us. The police do not make us safe. You call the police after the fact. You don't call the police before the crime is committed. You call the police after the crime is committed, after you've been robbed, after you've been shot, after you've been attacked. So I don't see the benefit in that. There is a place for police, but what we've got right now is nothing that we can boast about. We need to take the monies and invest it in the city. The mayor needs to be called out for what he's done. It needs to be, we need to make sure that the community is made aware of how this man is doing everything that the police union is telling him to do. He's not our mayor. He is the police union's mayor. The police union is running our city. We need to deal with those rascals, all right? Whoever they may be. This is our city. We need to act accordingly. We need to cry out loud. We need to start making a protest down there at the police department. We have a right to stand down there. It's a public street, and let it be known, cry loud, spare not, lift up our voices like a trumpet in Zion, and let this whole state know we've had enough of what's happening in the city of Troy. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Jessica. And I am going to come back. Yes.
I'm sorry. Just to give a little history on the Prospect Park pool, because I did an investigation. So the fact of the matter is it costs about $1.5 million to fix the pool. And the reason why is because the pool is an historic site. And some of the parts that's needed to fix that pool doesn't even be made anymore. So the fact of the matter is that with the trees and the debris and everything on the pool, and the fact that they are allocating the funds to other areas instead of allocating the monies towards the pool, we will never get that pool fixed. We can. Troy gets enough money to get it fixed, but they don't feel a need to. They look at it as more expensive. And I think that could be done and give these kids a good summer instead of hiring 6 more police officers, because they have the money in the budget to do so.
Thank you for that background, Tasheca. It really pays to have knowledge on what exactly is going on. So thank you. I'm going to circle back to Willie Terry now.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I just had a problem getting my speaker on. Yeah, my name is Willie Terry, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Coalition of Black Trade Unions, which is better known as CBTU. We have been involved in working on issues in the Troy community through the Troy Area Labor Council and various community organizations. The point of policing in the Black community or in our community has been on our agenda throughout the nation, and Troy is no exception. The topic of today's forum, which is community investment, not community police, is a matter that our community has been grappling with since our ancestors were brought here to this country during the slave trade. And with the institution of racism into the American economic system, this has made the policing, the Black community, look like they're acting as a terrorist organization whose only purpose in our community is to maintain strict social control over us. And no matter what our social and economic conditions is in the community. Even today, with all the terrible things that were done to us due to the policing in our community, and that is from slavery to Reconstruction to Jim Crow and into Black Lives Matter era, our community has not called for the total defund of police or get rid of policing in our community, because they understand that there might be times when there are incidents in our community that it may be necessary for police involvement. But those matters do not say that we need police to be in our community all the time watching us. What it is saying is that our social problems are a result of this economic system that put our community in a situation due to the economic system. I have a few things that I want to propose that we do with those funds, and also a few things that we should continue to organize around. And first of all, I would like to propose that we call for the immediate budget and hiring freeze of future increases in police spending and hiring until the city move forward with a community discussion of those impacted by the problems of policing, and this includes an examination of police practices, protocol, and internal culture. And the police should use those funds to demilitarize the police. We don't need tanks rolling around here or military hardware rolling around here in Troy. They should use those funds to redirect funding to mental health, affordable housing, and social services. They should use those funds to fund full-time community organizers to help organize tenant unions, block associations, and neighborhood associations. They should use those funds to empower communities to re-envision public safety in an ethical and just way. They should use those funds to invest in community health clinics. Use those funds to invest in more organized, supervised after-school programs. Use those funds to invest in recruiting and training youth and students on how to serve in their community. I would say develop a community youth corps or something. Use those funds to invest in diversity training of the entire Troy Police Department and court system. Use those funds to give minority vendors and service providers a chance to get some of the government funds. Use those funds to invest in setting up neighborhood institute and community leadership institute. Use those funds in increasing people to educate people so they can participate in the community and government affairs. Use those funds in diversifying the criminal court and also the entire working staff of those organizations. Use the funds to invest in conflict management training for community and police. Use those funds to invest funds in the community environmental policing. Use those funds to provide more community legal aid that people need to navigate the criminal justice system. Use those funds for more funding to aid the safety and health of our elder community. Use those funds to invest in cross-cultural dialogue forums so that people can begin to understand the various communities. The Black Panther said something a long time ago. They said, power to the people. Well, I like to say power to organize people, because people have to be organized. And I want to end by saying, let's organize our people and continue to struggle. Thank you.
Thank you, Willie. And thank you to everyone who spoke. I have a couple of questions that are open to any one of the panelists to answer, and then we'll move into questions from our audience. So the first question is, what impact has the culture of policing in Troy or anywhere has had on you? And I'm gonna give the mic to Deanna Swenson.
Let's hope my phone don't die again, you guys. I'm sorry. So I have a 19-year-old who has been very involved with the police station, with the police department in Troy and Albany. They just plastered her face all over social media the other day and like tried to make it, you know, thank God the public didn't do what they thought they were gonna do. But, you know, they've done everything from punch my daughter in her face to call her anything but a child of God. They, you know, and it's hard. Like when I drive down, like I said, I live in North Central. Like when I drive down and I see a group of boys, I tell them like, yo, go somewhere else, y'all. Like y'all ain't got no house to go hang out at, because I know the police is gonna come mess with them, like whether they're doing something or not. and it's very scary. Like my 14-year-old, she won't even walk to the store anymore. And I have grandkids now, and it's like, dang, what, you know, do I stay here with them? Like, do I go somewhere else? Like, I have a Black grandson now. Like, it's scary in Troy because they feel like they can do whatever and get away with it. And history shows that they, you know, why they feel that way. And it's very scary. I don't know. I'm sorry. My head is all over the place. So
You're fine.
It is. It's rough, you know. And as far as like even, I would say me personally, there's at least one officer that, you know, frequents North Central that I know for a fact that he's a little different than the rest of them. He is. So I just don't understand why they feel that more is the answer. I don't know. But that's all. I don't know. Sorry, guys.
Did anyone else, thank you, Deanna, for answering that. Did anyone else from the panel want to answer that question of what impact the culture of policing has had on you?
I think the police here in Troy, well, it kind of, people kind of depend on the police, you know, they call them for problems and different things. And I think that's like a culture of dependency. I think people should organize themselves. That's why I talked about people organizing. People should organize themselves and kind of also patrol their own area, their own community. I don't mean like no vigilante, but these communities should be connected, you know, in some form, a way politically. And in that way, they would have more of an impact on how to direct policies or how to get to the mayor so that he won't, you know, bring out all those policies to put more and more police into neighborhoods, which we don't need.
All right, I'm going to thank you, Willie. Now we'll hear from Renee, Powell, then Jessica Ashley, and Deborah Garrett wants to give a statement, so I'm going to give Deborah some room to speak as well.
Okay, I'm going to answer the question about how policing has had an impact on me. And so just to give a little background, I do a lot of traveling up and down the East Coast. And at one point in my life, I didn't have fear of police officers, and I'll tell you why. And growing up in the DC area, two of my neighbors, police officers, godfather police officer. And so I had that exposure, and they helped to create that relationship. We didn't fear the police, and the police were part of the community. We fast forward now to today and traveling up and down the highway. When I get pulled over, I'm traumatized. And it's not so much that any of my experiences has led to any sort of brutality, but I am traumatized based on the experiences that I see in the media and that I hear that other people have gone through. And so that has to be dealt with on an entire national, local, personal level, just changing the image of policing. I did some research and, looking at, well, why did policing start? When the people came to the North American continent, things started getting out of control. So you had these vigilante groups going around protecting their property and their areas, and that evolved into policing. Then you come up with slavery, that comes into play. So then here again, protecting property, slavery. Here we are in the 21st century. We don't have any more slaves. We do have property, but it's not a land grab thing. We have deeds. Everything is delineated and defined. So for me, policing needs to be definitely redefined. What the focus needs to be and the way they need to do it. Demilitarizing definitely needs to come out of play here in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. When I think of how policing has affected me directly, I hate to say that I am a mad Black woman, but that's what I am. That's what I've been for years. I remember constantly having arguments with my father as a teenager about the police. He did not believe that such things such as the police beating you for nothing was happening. He was clueless, as are many people, Black and white. Don't really, this is why they're so shocked at the George Floyds and the Edson Thevenins and Breonna Taylors. They're shocked. I was not shocked at any of it. I knew that the potential, I've had young people come to me after a night session with the police, and their eyes are blackened and their jaws are swollen, they were given a citation, or they were arrested because they didn't have a bell on their bike, and they were brutalized. I've spoken to, I've advocated with them at the police station. So I've been angry for a long time, and I'm ashamed of it. I battle with it. I do not believe, I get annoyed because I hear so many people say, well, all police aren't bad. Listen, if I am in a gang and As one of those gang members, I refuse to be a part of brutalizing, but I yet remain a gang member. I am as guilty as the ones who are brutalizing. The blue wall of silence, you've witnessed crimes by your peers and you yet would say nothing. There's a great deal of intimidation, I know, on the force where they intimidate the other officers. But so, yeah, I've heard people say that it needs to be done away with and built up from the ground up. I agree with that. Because if you're building a house and the foundation of the house is rickety, is not solid, then what you put on that house, the extension of the house or building up of the house, it's not going to stand. You cannot build on a foundation that isn't solid. And the foundation of this police department is not sound. It isn't solid. We've got players involved who are in control of decision-making that affects yours and my life and the lives of our family and our community. And these people have no business having any say because they're criminals. So that's for myself personally. I don't want to die leaving this situation as is. I have one grandson, I'm sorry. He just turned 1 Thursday. And these things are going to be part of his life. If I can't do something with my life to change it, that's it.
Thank you for that. And now we're going to hear from Deborah Carrick. Following Deborah Carrick, Jerry Ford, you can speak.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say first, thank you for everybody putting this together. I'm so saddened about all the stuff that's going on. I didn't necessarily have a question. I just wanted to paint a picture, right? For one, I totally agree with everybody said this evening. More particularly, I love how Mr. Terry summed it up, right? Because I don't think that there was an act of the community of what would we like to see happen. You know I was a part of the affinity groups that got up and spoke, and I know for a point that myself, Jerry Ford, Mr. Renee Powell, and Kevin Pryor, and all of us that's included in the Troy Coalition of Black Leaders, we sat up 2 days preparing like a format that we wanted to present to that PRC group. We wanted to make sure that we set it up in a way where it wasn't like we just was talking from the side of our neck. We wanted to make sure that there was knowledge and information that can go along with it so that people can understand what we needed. And the main thing that we kept coming up with was trust. Trust is a big issue for anyone that's in the Black and brown community. Trust is a huge issue. And excuse me, how can I forget Steve? Steve was a big part of that too. I'm so sorry. But trust is a big issue for Black and brown communities. But like I said, I want to paint a picture, right? So my mom used to say this to my brother all the time when he would leave out the door. Don't forget you were already born with 2 strikes against you. You were born male and you were born Black. And I did not get this. I never understood where she was coming from. I used to be like, well, why she keep saying that to him? And he had more rules to when he was going out than I was going out. I had to be in a certain time. He had to be in a certain time too, but it just was different for him. It was a different kind of look on her face when he left the house. It was a different kind of questioning about who he was going to be with and where he was going when he was going out the door versus me. And I didn't get that until I had my own sons. Now, mind you, my sons are all 11 and under. But the point of the matter is that my son asked me the other day, Mommy, he wanted to go to the Stewart's right up the block. And I'm saying to myself, I know that at this age, I was doing a bunch of things, but I just can't let my child walk out to the store by himself, even if it's only on the corner, because of the fear of not knowing what can happen to him. My children are so sweet and kind and so oblivious to what these maniacs and evil people can do to him because of just the complexion of his skin. Now, mind you, I have, like I said, 3 sons, and my youngest son, he's been saying he wanted to be a police officer since God knows how long. He's been saying it for so long. He's probably been, I want to say like, at least when he was in Head Start. He's been saying it since he was in Head Start. And the fact of the matter is that I want to feed into the dreams and the hopes of my children, but I'm scared as hell to have my son, who was my baby at the end of the day, whether he's grown or not, go into the police force. Now, mind you, I have family members that are police officers and detectives in New York City, excuse me. It just looks so different. And like I said, the trust thing is a huge factor for us. When they did that report, that was already set up. They already had their agenda. They only invited us to the table just to say that they did it because that was the requirements of the report. And all that stuff was already preset. I personally lost trust. I lost faith in the city and how things are being ran. And I sat on the city council. So I know for a point that you get paid to do a job, and the job is to serve the people in the community. So I say this to anyone who is listening that is from the city council, that is a city official, with the utmost respect, however you may take it. You have a job to do. My taxes, along with a whole lot of other people's taxes, pay your salary that you get $15,000 a year to sit on the city council to be the voice of the people. So when you going in there, you voting for extra police officers, please know that you're not being the voice of the people because we didn't ask for that. We asked for community centers. We asked for a community diverse officer, somebody that can relate to Black and brown people that can speak on our behalf when you don't know nothing of it. We asked for grocery stores in our community. We asked for those buildings, like Young Diamond said, those buildings in North Central that's been sitting abandoned for years. And a lot of these houses are 100 and something years old. They've been sitting and sitting, that you got to knock them down to repair them because they're so beat up now. Who has the money to really fix them? That's what we need. We need y'all to really listen and take heed to what is going on. You want to know why these kids are acting a fool? You ain't got nothing to do. I would act a fool too. I have absolutely nothing to do with my life because you have made it where I can't do nothing. We need GD programs. We need better health services. All those things that Mr. Terry named, that is important. But I want to make sure I say this before I finish, is that us as Black and brown people, it's time for us to wake up. And I'm not saying wake up in the sense of like, oh, I'm woke. No, I mean, it's time for us to wake up. We don't have to ask these people to do anything for us. We can get this stuff ourselves. So that means if you know somebody who's going to school to be a doctor, let's tack them on. Let's make sure we supporting them. Let's make sure we giving them what they need. If we know somebody going to school to be a lawyer, let's create our own community, because at this point in time, we're not a part of the community of Troy. So we need to create our own thing. So I could go on for a long time, but I just want to say thank you for this. I really appreciate the fact that you took the time to put this together for us that needed this. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Jerry, you have the floor.
So the question was about police interaction. I just want to give y'all a short story of something that just transpired this Saturday. So this Saturday, while we were at the opening day for the Troy Central Little League, a disagreement that ultimately turned into a fight happened between two adults that were there. At the time, as I can recall, there could have been maybe 2 to 3 police officers that were on scene. Community members stepped in to de-escalate the fight and separate the individuals, mainly myself and Stephen Figueroa. And one of the officers there called for backup. So as this situation is taking place, all you hear in the background are the blaring sirens. And we see 3 police cars screech up on the scene. I immediately asked the sergeant, stop them right where they are. We got this. We can de-escalate this situation, because now people are coming very agitated and they're becoming nervous just by the way that the police rolled up on the scene. So when we talk about interactions with policing, and I just want to add this also, this isn't the first time that me personally that I've had to step into a situation like that. September of 2015, there was a football game between Troy High School and Albany High School. And for some reason, the police were called to McDonald's, and the police and the young people got into it. And before I knew it, the whole police force seemed like was standing right there. And I thank God that my instinct told me to go on Facebook Live, and I stood between the police force and those young people. And I know that if I wasn't standing there with that camera, that something terrible would have happened. And I know this for a fact because one of the officers pepper sprayed the crew. And you can look at this Facebook Live, and another one of the officers asked that officer, why did you do that? An officer had to ask another officer, why did you do that? Not escalating the situation. I mean, not de-escalating the situation, but doing things to escalate things because they don't understand. And so if you want to make an invest in people that can help our community, invest in programs that can help our community, mental health programs, crisis intervention programs. These are the things that we need. We need to tackle the problems and not just, with these quick solutions. And we know that 6 officers will not be a great solution to any problem that we have in our Black community based on history. And so I just wanted to let you know that this just happened. And at that opening day, the mayor was there, the chief was there, all of these individuals, city officials was there, and myself and Stephen and a couple of other community leaders, we were able to step in and de-escalate that situation. And those 3 police cars that roared up onto the scene didn't even need to be called. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. I feel compelled to also answer this question, although I'm the moderator. But I remember there a time when I was living downtown, and me and my partner, Robert, we got pulled over by a Troy police officer. And that Troy police officer found it upon himself to be very rude, to also search our car, and to have our car towed, all over something that was on Robert's license. And so, and then when I said to him, what was he looking for in the car? I told him, my partner's a photographer. At the time, I was a high school teacher. And his response to me was, I don't tell you how to do your job. Don't tell me how to do mine. Part of the problem is that as an educator, I'm held accountable for the education and success of my students. I don't see it as any different for us to hold officers accountable for how they keep us safe. And that's really why I wanted to share that story. So thank you all for answering that question. I want to, we're nearing 8:30 now, and I want to open it up for questions from the audience. The next question that I had was, what do you envision? What do you envision when we say the words community investment? I feel that a lot of the panelists have already mentioned alternatives to 6 community police officers, and also what they've envisioned for community investment. But I welcome people on Facebook to write those things in the chat as well, what you envision as community investment. And if there are any questions that I can pose to the panelists, please let me know that in the chat. Diamond wants to answer that question, so I'm going to give Diamond some room to talk about what community investment looks like.
First off, I just want to thank everyone for the kind words and gestures. Thank you so much. But to me, community investment, while it has to do with investing into the buildings in the community, I feel, and the people in the community, I feel like it also has to do with young and old coming together as one, being able to know that there's people, because I know every day I wake up, even when I'm feeling sad, I know that there's somebody out there who will invest time with me and help me through my situations. But I know that because of a lot of things happening with police officers and a lot of things happening at home or different things, it causes the youth in the community to just disrespect a lot of the adults who genuinely could help them and try to help them. So I personally feel like community investment is investing in yourself so that you can invest in others. Mainly, that's what I feel like.
Thank you, Diamond. That was so cute. And I'm going to pass it on to Tasheca, who also wants to say something.
I'm so sorry. Well, I'm late on this. I wanted to go back to what Jerry said. The youth of Troy do not trust the TPD. They see them as the enemy, and rightful so. Sorry, I'm a mom of 6 boys, and I lived in Central for a lot of years. And I have seen them profile, I have seen them harass, I have seen them demonize, like Miss Renee Powell said, even give babies tickets for jaywalking to meet some type of quota. So I think a bridge between, honestly, we don't need the police. I think we need to focus on getting some of that money allocated to our youth, like Diamond and like-minded children, to really get things going and know that they have a safe place in Troy, New York, because I don't think they feel as so. I'm in North Central. The bike rescue for my boys was like a safe haven. I don't know if some people might know, but the bike rescue, like, we need to give them their props because they went into the community, they got through to the kids. There's no such programs like that. I think we need to really focus on them programs, and I'm just gonna stop right there. Just being a mom, those programs are really critical to our children's lives as a whole. You know, with the shootings and everything else. So yeah, I'm just gonna stop there.
Thank you, Tasheca. I didn't catch any questions in the chat. Okay, just making sure. I was wondering if someone was gonna pop up. Okay, great. So I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight, and for sharing space with us as we talk about what's going on right now and what we'd like to see in our community, and the concerns that we share in having 6 additional community police in our community. So thank you to all the panelists for sharing all of your words and your stories and your truth. We do have some actionable items for folks. There's a petition that you can sign, and you can also speak at Thursday's meeting. And the link to sign up to speak, I believe, is posted the day before. But we could share the link to sign the petition as well. So please do that. And if you have the time, if you're available and you can speak, please do so at the City Council meeting on Thursday. Thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you to the Sanctuary for Independent Media for hosting this event. And thank you to all of the panelists for speaking tonight, all the speakers. Your words have impacted me, and I'm sure they've impacted everyone here who's heard you speak. So thank you. Thank you, and have a blessed night, the rest of this night. Go drink some tea and self-care.